So good morning, everybody. Welcome with Yom Tov to one and all. I shared yesterday an anecdote about a woman who calls up the rabbi. She says, I have a big problem on my hands. My husband, Chaim, won the lottery for $320 million. The rabbi says, Hazois Nami, this is your problem? You should have worse problems in life. She says, I know my husband. When he hears this, he's going to faint and drop dead. It's over. He won't be able to deal with it. So the rabbi says, Loli dog, don't worry. Just tell your husband, call your husband and tell him before he comes home, I want to talk to him. I'll already deal with it. Great. She calls her husband, she says, on the way home, go to the Rav, he wants to see you. Goes into the rabbi, what harav, what gives me the honor. And the rabbi says, I just wanted to know how you're doing, what's your matzav, what's your situation in parnasa and livelihood. He says, ala panim. That's how they say it by you guys, no? By us they say different words, but we won't get into that. You know, I'm a kaptzin, I'm a poor man, my father was poor, my grandfather was poor, all the way back for generations. I just don't have mazel. Can't pay the bills, can't make ends meet. The rabbi says, do you ever buy a lottery ticket? He says, yeah, every week, 30 years. But people like me don't win. People in Kentucky win, people in Montana, not people like me. The rabbi says, you never know. Did you buy this week? He says, of course. How much is it? $320 million. Maybe you won. He says, Rebbe, what are you creating illusions and dreams that are so unrealistic? The rabbi says, well, somebody wins. In most cases, somebody got to win. Maybe that somebody is you. You're not worse than anybody else. He says, listen, these fantasies will do me nothing. Let's not build up hopes which are futile and vain. Rabbi, Mayim, what if you did? You know, why do you... Your mazel is dead. What if you did? With his rabbi, listen, if I won, you're getting half. So the rabbi fainted on the spot. It's an anecdote, but there's also a message here, which I'm going to address Be'ezer Hashem. There is a very enigmatic medrash. The medrash Rabbah says on Parshas Vayeshev, V'Yosef hurad Mitzrayma. Yosef was lowered down into Egypt. That's the beginning of Chamishi, the beginning of the 5th section of Vayeshev. Yosef is lowered down to Egypt, and he is bought, he's purchased by Potiphar, one of the ministers of the Pharaoh, Sarat HaBochim, the great butcher of Egypt. He is the new master of Yosef. Hurad comes from the word raid, right? Yirida, Yarad. He was lowered down to Egypt, and we understand he was lowered. He didn't go himself. He was taken by force. He was sold as a slave. Comes the Medrash and says Hurad means something else. In Tehillim, you certainly know it from the song, Yifrach b'yam of tzaddik v'rov shalom ad bli yareach, remember? V'yered miyam ad yam. David HaMelech is talking about Mashiach, or his son Shloimeh. V'yered is what? What's v'yered? He will rule. Rule is a better word. He will rule from sea to sea. We already have it in Bereshis. Hashem speaks to Adam and Chava, and what does he say? Uridu, right? Pru, Revu, Milu et haaretz v'kivshu, fill the world, conquer it, multiply. Uridu, I allow you to rule over the beasts, over the animals, over the fish, etc. Uridu, rulership. The Yosef Hurad Mitzrayim means Yosef would rule over Egypt. The Medrash puts it kivshon, he would conquer it, from the word kibush, which is very strange. We all know that Yosef becomes the ruler of Egypt. He becomes the prime minister. But that would take a very long time. For a year he's going to be by Potiphar. For 12 years he's going to be in prison. Not only is he not a king, not a ruler, he's a prisoner. He's a slave, even before he's a prisoner. One day he will be appointed as the prime minister, as the viceroy of Egypt. So in the future he'll become a ruler. But the Medrash is saying it on the words V'Yosef Hurad Mitzrayim, which means he descends. And says Hurad, don't think it means Yirida. It means he was summoned to leadership, to royalty, on those words Hurad Mitzrayim. There's something else. When Yosef is in Egypt, you all know the story in Parshas Vayeshev, somebody takes a liking to him, his master's wife. And she does not stop incessantly. She tries to persuade him to behave immorally, to engage in what we would call promiscuous behavior. Yosef refuses. Vayimo'ein. He refuses. But then the Torah says, that's in the fourth section of, that's in the also the fifth section of Vayeshev. Then the Torah says, Vayhi ka'yoim hazeh. There was one fateful day. Hayoim hazeh. You got to figure out which day that was. And Yosef comes to the house, lasos malachte, to do work. Ve'enish me'anshe habayis. No one is home. Besides, of course, for this woman. And here are the words, and I quote: Vatispesehu bevigdoi leimor shichva imi vayazov bigdoi biyada vayonos vayetze achutza. Did I quote it correctly? She grabs him by his cloak. Leimor, to say, lay with me. He leaves his beged, his cloak, in her hand. He flees and he goes out. And of course we know the rest of the story. She accuses him of trying to violate her, and he is thrust into a prison cell in Egypt, where he would remain for more than a decade. I'm going to focus on one word, which in Chumash, these nuances are so meticulous and precise that sometimes they become the catalysts for a deeper understanding of the text. What does leimor mean in the whole Chumash? What does leimor mean? To repeat to others. Vayedaber Hashem al Moshe, leimor. To be said, to be communicated, to be taught. What's the leimor here? Vatispeseyu, you never thought of that. Vatispeseyu bevigdoi leimor. What she wanted, he should repeat it? She didn't want him to repeat it. It's a private thing. The whole point here was intimacy, confidentiality, secrecy. It was a betrayal of her husband, and of herself, and of Yosef. There was no leimor here. This is not a State of the Union address. Transferring an embassy to Jerusalem. These are things you got to give it to our president. Meshuga, 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 meshuga. But courage. MS. Alts is the Eibishter, but comes through people, yeah? Yeah. This wasn't no lamer. What should have it said? Vatispeseyu bevigdoi. What should have said if you would write the text? Atazoi. Vatoimer. She grabbed him by, which is what happened probably. She grabbed him by his cloak and she said, "Come to me, lay with me, shichveimi." Vatispeseyu bevigdoi lamer. One word, but this word contains a deeper perspective, or the underlying story, the subplot, as we would say. The Gemara in Maseches Saita, Daf Lamed Vav, Tractate Saita 36, and Rashi quotes it, asks, what does it mean he came home to do work? Whenever you see such a description in Chumash, it triggers curiosity. Because the Chumash, the Tanakh, wasn't written like an ordinary novel, a Havdil, where you try to zoom in on all of the nuances and the details to give background, to create a backdrop, to sketch out a scene. So you'll tell me the color of the eyes of the person. You'll tell me their height. You'll tell me their waistline. You'll tell me the color of the table, the chairs, what the room looked like. This is in order to bring the reader. You remember when you were a teenager and you got depressed and you read a novel for 3 weeks? You still do it? They try to bring you in, to bring you into the atmosphere. The Tanakh is not that way. When it does give details, it's always to teach something. It's a theme in the story. We don't know what Avram Avinu looked like. We don't know what Moshe Rabbeinu looked like. I don't know what Adam and Chava looked like. It's pretty significant, but we know nothing about this. We know that Yosef was very handsome, but that's part of the story. We know that Avshalom had long hair, but that's essential to the story. Yosef came home to do work. Okay, and what if he came home to play chess? And what if he came home because he came home, it was lunchtime? The Gemara is curious, what's Lassus Malachta? So Rav and Shmuel argue, two of the great Talmudic sages. One says, he came to do work. And the other says, no, it's a euphemism. He came to do work with her. To quote the Gemara, Lassus Tzrachavba. He came to fulfill his needs. If so, how does he run away? And why does he run away? So the Chazal famously say, Rashi quotes it, the Gemara says it, the Medrash says it, the Zohar says it, the Muzdi Yoiknoi Shal Yaakov Aviv Ra B'Chaloin. It's not going to be the same class, don't worry. The image of his father he saw in the window. Now I ask you, he didn't know what his father looked like? He was 17 years old when he left his father. He knew what his father looked like. Nonetheless, he still succumbed to Potiphar's wife's demands, and there was something about the image of his father in the window. What does it even mean he saw it in the window? What, there was CNN playing and they were interviewing Yaakov and Chevron? The image of his father in the window, B'Chaloin. What is that? What's the meaning of that? If you're familiar with Baal HaTurim, you know the Baal HaTurim does something very interesting. Wherever there's a word in Chumash, he will tell you how many times you have exactly the same word throughout the whole Tanakh. He'll write B'Mesorah Beis, B'Mesorah Daled, B'Mesorah Gimel, and he'll quote it everywhere. Why? That's significant. Whenever the same word is used, it could be completely two different narratives, two different subjects. Somehow they're connected. In Parshas Tetzaveh it says Aaron should come in with his bells under the coat, hanging from his coat. V'nishma koiloi b'voya l'kodesh. When he comes into the Mishkan, the voice should be heard because the bells are pounding against each other. So the Baal HaTurim will write it where you say, V'nishma, you have in Megillas Esther. And he'll go through all the places. I'm just giving one example. The word Vayima'en, he refused, which is in Vayeshev. Yosef refused Eshes Potiphar. is found in Vayeshev itself, one more place. And that is, Yaakov Avinu hears that Yosef was killed. Vayakumu kol banav v'chol bnotav lenachamo. All of his sons and daughters come up to comfort him. Vayimo'ein lehisnachem. He refused to be comforted. It's interesting, in the same Vayeshev, you have Vayimo'ein of Yaakov, and then you have Vayimo'ein of Yosef. Yaakov refuses to find comfort for Yosef's death, or supposed death. Yosef refuses the demands, the requests of the wife of Potiphar, until that one day when he comes home to do his work, quote unquote. What are those two Vayimo'eins? When Yosef finally becomes the prime minister of Egypt, he meets his brothers 22 years after he's been separated from his family. It's a nice amount of time. Surprisingly to us, he forgives them. He meets them and he says, don't be depressed, don't get upset. They shouldn't get upset. He shouldn't get upset. They should tell him, you don't get upset. He's fine. You guys, relax. He becomes their therapist. Strange stuff. Psychology today, they would say he has a syndrome. He's the victim, and he's trying to heal the perpetrator. There's a word for it, there's a description for it. You're familiar with it? Very strange. Either this is a sign of a horrible situation or a glorious situation. Relax, don't worry. You didn't sell me, God sent me. Go back to my father and tell him, Samani Elokim la'adin al kol eretz Mitzrayim. God made me a master over the entire Egypt. And the commentators ask, that's the nachas you want to give your father? You know your father. You think he cares that you're the prime minister of Egypt? So if I want to give you nachas, and I tell you your son is becoming the prime minister of Indonesia, so Felderois, tell Yaakov that you learn 6 blot Gemara a day. Tell Yaakov you put on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin every day. Tell Yaakov you went to the mikveh every morning before davening. What are you telling Yaakov? You graduated physics from Harvard University. It's nice, but Yaakov, Ish Tam, Yoshev Ehalim. Yaakov sat and learned. Samani Elokim la'adin. That's what you should tell my father. I made God a master over Egypt. There are 2 types of people. There are AMs and there are FMs. I'm going to remind you of your good old days or bad old days. There's people who go into their car, where I come from, where some of you come from, and they go to AM. And that's where the radio remains. Or people who go to FM. It's not just where you put your radio on, what type of soul you are. The difference between AM and FM is, in AM the world is always coming to an end. You give us 22 minutes and we will give you the apocalypse. You give us 22 minutes and we'll tell you how horrible things are. And they always krat something, guys, and Baruch Hashem, we live in a crazy world. There's always some good news to put you into depression and throw you over the top. In Israel, everything is AM. Whenever at least the taxis that I take, I don't know. You guys have FM here? Anybody is relaxed? En davar kaza. Yehudim, en davar kaza. You remember there was an airline, Tower Air, Olav Shalom. You remember? So he once landed this time of the year in Tel Aviv. So the captain gets on the mic, he says, Bruchim Abayim, welcome to Israel. To all those who are sitting, Happy New Year. To all those who are standing, Happy Hanukkah. Restless people. AM souls, like AM radio, is always this happened and this happened. Here there's a traffic jam and here there's a catastrophe and here's an accident and here another politician was caught doing whatever and here what we're talking about and here and here's another mice, and here's another corruption, and here's Russia, and celebrity and freilich. You go to FM, everybody's relaxed, serene, tranquil. You wouldn't even know there's any issues in the world. Somewhere we're in a planet where everything is beautiful and wholesome and wonderful. There's two types of souls. There are FM souls and AM souls. Which type of soul are you? There are souls who are always stressed out about what's going on right now, and there's always something going on. You will check your texts, hopefully, and you will see. Somebody has a crisis, somebody needs something, somebody lost something, the cleaning lady, of course, didn't show up, the electricity is down, there's a leak, the bathroom is not working, there's no supper, not today, tomorrow, somebody has the flu, the doctor just called you back, the principal said your boy doesn't belong in this school. Baruch Hashem, loy am. And those are the small stuff. I'm not going to do the big stuff right now. You'll figure out the big stuff. Or whatever it is, everyone in their own world, based on your life story. Everyone has their peklach, whether it's physical, financial, psychological, emotional, spiritual, or the lucky ones, all of them together simultaneously. Doesn't rain, it pours, doesn't pour, tsunamis love to, they are attracted by our beauty. There are other souls who are FM souls, right? Everything is good, they're always humming a tune. We call them sometimes detached, out for lunch, clueless, abyssal madna, but they're always smiling, and it's like, can you wake up and smell the coffee? Now, if an AM and an FM are married to each other, it's really a machaya. AMs will always arrive in the airport 4 hours before the flight. They're expecting a third world war at any time soon. You never know what Iran is up to. You never know what North Korea is up to. And with Trump, you never know what the response is going to be. Yeah. FM people are like, everything is perfect. When you're married to an FM or an AM, the marriage can either be gloriously humorous and interesting or catastrophically disastrous. Did I just make up a word? It's fine. Webster could make up, I can't. Mrs. Sharfstein, did I make up a word? Okay, it worked. Fine. If you look in Jewish history, spiritually speaking, there are also AM and FM people. And in many ways, it was the difference between the Avos and the Shvatim on a more lofty spiritual level. The Shvatim, the Baal HaTanya, the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaGeula of Yutas Kislev writes, chose as an occupation to be shepherds. It says the brothers took the flock of their father and went to Shechem to shepherd the flock. The way the Chumash describes it is, Vayelchu, I'll just quote the pasuk. Vayelchu echav liris esoin aviyim b'Shechem. The brothers of Yosef went to shepherd their father's flock in Shechem. Vayomi Yisrael el Yosef haloyachecha royim b'Shechem lechavesh lechacha aleim. Yisrael tells Yosef, haloi, strange word, haloi, wow, your brothers are shepherding in Shechem. Let me go and send you to them. Let me send you to them. Go and I'll send you to them. Also very strange. Go and I'll send you to them. Go to them. I'll send you to them. What's go and I'll send you to them. Ve'eshlachach. Vayomer loy hineini. Now I don't mean to be a nudnik, but I'm going to go again on that one word. Hashem calls Avraham and says, Avram, Avram, vayomer hineini. From the burning bush he says, Moshe, Moshe, vayomer hineini. Here, vayomer loy hineini. Sure. Who was Yosef talking to? Hillary? Of course. Yaakov tells Yosef, your brothers are in Shechem shepherding the flock. I want to send you to them. Yosef said, Hineni. He said to him, Hineni. Of course he was talking to him. Well, this is a raya that when you're having a conversation, really you shouldn't be talking to the person, you should be texting. Like the minig of people. So the pasuk has to say, Vayomer lo, he actually spoke to him. He actually believed in conversation, which very few people believe in today. But if I'm not mistaken, they didn't have that at that time, if I'm not mistaken. So therefore, what's the vayomer loy hineni, vayomer loy? What's the lechavesh lachacha? And with the concern that you're going to lose your patience with me, vayomer Yisrael el Yosef. When does it say Yaakov? When does it say Yisrael? Vayeshev Yaakov, v'Yisrael aves Yosef mikol banav, vayomer Yisrael el Yosef. Mrs. Rhodes, you're going to have to make sure at the end that I answered all the questions, and if not, you'll remind me, okay? Why were they shepherds? So the Baal HaTanya, the Alter Rebbe writes, because they felt that the proper way to communicate with the deeper layers of life is to be secluded, to be insulated. A shepherd has the unique luxury of communicating with nature. You're in a serene environment, surrounded by greenery, by nature, by brooks or streams of water, by rivers or lakes, which the sheep or the goats or the animals, the livestock need. As they're pasturing in the grass, there's just a certain ambiance which lends itself to spiritual poetry. It lends itself to prayer. It lends itself to serenity. It lends itself to communion with God. You know, sometimes you go to some of the yeshuvim outside of these simtaot. What do they call? You go sometimes to these yeshuvim. I went to the middle of the night to Ma'on once. Now there's some issues with the neighbors. It's not that serene, at least for me. But for them, whoa, Gan Eden. Gan Eden, and the sheep, Leifen, Megate, Mekumt. In many ways, there's something very, very, just very natural. You don't allow yourself to get entangled and enmeshed in AM radio. You remain in FM. That's what the Shvatim believed in. When they heard their brother dreaming that he wants all the sheaves to bow down to him, and the sun and the moon and the 11 stars, they said, this is not really Judaism. This is a whole different vision that we run away from, because in order to be able to see God, you have to be able to close your eyes to the larger world, the Shvatim believed. You have to be able to be a shepherd. A woman sent me an email. She went to the Blind Museum in Tel Aviv. You ever visited it? She said she was petrified. First time in her life experiencing what a blind person experiences. And for hours, she was taken by this tour guide, 6 people in the group, and she was so tense, but he relaxed her, he calmed her down, he guided them. She says it was just magnificent to be in this person's presence. At the end, you come to a food store, a grocery store, and you have to choose food without seeing. And for the first time, you realize what it is for a blind person to go into Makolet and choose food based on the sense of smell and based on the sense of touch, and that's it. You know how we take for granted vision, eyesight. And she learned, you know, how you have to rely on different parts of your existence, of your physiological self, in order to be able to exist, which we often don't realize. At the end, you take your food and you sit down and you eat in absolute darkness. And the tour guide who's taking her around introduces himself. It turns out he was born blind, which is what makes him so successful doing this job. And in the middle of the conversation, he turns to her and says, "Why are you so uptight?" She says, "How do you know that I'm uptight? First of all, it's pitch dark. Second of all, you can't even see if it would be light." He says, when one can't see with their eyes, they develop a different type of vision. Relax. For the next hour, he was schmoozing with them, and she writes to me, "I've never met such a magnificent, profound, wise, sensitive, deep soul like him. I was mesmerized by his depth, by his perspective about how he sees life." And then she says, the lights go on. It's over. And I take a look at him. And I quote her. She says, "Rabbi Jacobson, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I couldn't look at him. His face was so deformed, his features so grotesque, his physique so abnormal. It was repulsing me. I felt I'm going to vomit, and I had to look away. And it was humiliating for me. I was embarrassed by myself that after knowing a little bit about this person, my sole response when I opened up my eyes and I saw him was, how could anybody look at this person? And then I discovered the truth. And I quote this woman. She says, as long as my eyes were closed, I could actually see him. The moment my eyes opened, I could not see him anymore. For me to see, my eyes had to be closed. When my eyes were closed, I got to see this person. I got to appreciate him. I got to respect him. I got to honor him and to see who he is. When my eyes opened and I could see, I stopped seeing. Because all my eyes would capture is the most external layer of his existence, completely dismissing his pnimius, his internal truth, his emes, his soul, his consciousness. How true is this in so many experiences in life? As long as I close my eyes, I could see. The moment I think I start seeing, I actually stopped seeing because my eyes reduced the reality to such narrowness. And that becomes the reality which I'm sure I see, when really I have now become completely blinded. Which now brings us to the next step, and that is, in Eretz Yisrael, there were two different plots of land. Yerushalayim, part of it was given to Yehuda, where the Beis HaMikdash was built. But before that, for 369 years, the Mishkan was in Shiloh, in whose plot? Yosef. Halachically, there's a big difference between Yerushalayim and Shiloh when it comes to eating karbanot, sacrifices. In Yerushalayim, there was always a chayma, a wall. You can only eat the sacrifices within the wall. If you left, the meat of the sacrifices became disqualified. They had to be burnt. Because the holiness of Yerushalayim was confined within the walls. In Shiloh, there were no walls. So how far can you eat the sacrifices for 369 years? For example, it came Pesach. All the families came and they offered a Pesach offering. They had a Seder. How far can you have your Seder? You know the answer? So the Mishnah tells us in Tractate Zvachim 116, in Shiloh you can eat as far as you go, as you want, with one condition. You should be able to see the Mishkan. If it's a clear day, if it's a beautiful day in the Holy Land, you could be 50 miles far, completely in a different region. As long as you're on top of a mountain, let's say, far away, but you could see the Mishkan of Shiloh, Niskadesh Biroya. The place becomes sanctified by seeing. Ask the Gemara why. It says because Yosef received the blessing, Ben Poiris Yosef, Ben Poiris Ale Oyin. Yosef is a charming child, he's pleasing to the eye. What's the connection? And then the Gemara says, since Yosef didn't want to look at what he wasn't, at that which didn't belong to him, Potiphar's wife, he looked away. Therefore, he was zoicha. He merited that in his place you can eat the sacrifices as far as you can go, as long as you can see. Which is interesting, but what's the connection? What's the relationship? You see, Yosef had the opposite theology and philosophy from his brothers. They said that Judaism needs to thrive in insulation. Yosef had a whole other vision. Yosef's vision of Yiddishkeit was that it must transform the landscape of planet Earth. For the brothers represented by their king Yehuda, Haisa Yehuda Lekotchay. Yehuda believes in having a wall around Yerushalayim. Kedusha must remain within the four walls. Because only in that environment, in that ambiance, can you nurture holiness. Can you nurture sensitivity to the transcendental. Can you allow people to look deeper into themselves and not become affected and tarnished and defiled by the glittering and dazzling appeal of materialism and all of its manifestations?
Yosef, he has a completely different vision. L'sakein oilam b'malchus shin daled yud b'malchus shakai, as we say in Aleinu. And thus, the brothers have a very difficult time with Yosef, because for them, he is the portal into assimilation. And they can even see that he will have a descendant, Yerovim ben Nevat, who will begin the process of assimilation in the Holy Land. The Navi Yeshaya says, Ephraim ba'ami yidbolal. That's where the word yidbolalut comes from. From Ephraim there will be assimilation. That's what they're seeing. When Yehuda tells his brothers, Ma betza ki naroget achinu v'chisinu es damei l'chu v'nimkerenu. You remember Yehuda says? They throw him into the pit. Yehuda says, what profit will there be from letting our brother die? Let's sell him. At the surface, it seems very, very, what's the word? Callous, harsh, horrible to hear. What, Rashi says, betza mammon. What money is there in the pit? Let's sell him. Let's at least make a couple of bucks off this kid. Yehuda was saying something much deeper. Yehuda was saying, we have a genuine debate. What's the future of Judaism? By killing your opponent, you don't win. You just destroyed the argument. Our vision will not be vindicated by destroying Yosef. Ma betza. We have to do something else. He believes in the world. Let him eat the kasha that he loves. Let him go to the Egyptians. Let him see how beautiful Soho, Greenwich Village, Tribeca, and Dizengoff are. Let him drink the coffee. Let him have a taste of the medicine he loves so much. Evet Kimmen Saleifen. He'll come back for mom's chicken soup. He'll come back to eat Yerushalmi kugel and jalapeno herring. He'll come back. He wants Egypt. Go. Go, hang out there. See the culture. See what paganism looks like in real life. See the values. Go, check it out. Become entrenched. Ma betza. Yehuda was saying something deep. You don't kill your opponent. Let's experiment. People ask if the Torah has humor. Does Torah have humor? When you learned Chumash in school, so the question really is if your teacher has a sense of humor. Sometimes yes, and sometimes really not. The Torah doesn't only have humor. In many ways, Judaism is about humor. You remember that class? How do I know? What's the name of the first Jewish boy? Yitzchak. What does Yitzchak mean? Humor. Laughter. Who names a child a joke? I want to know what the therapist would think. Hi, what's your name? Yitzchak. Really? Who gave you this name? My father, my mother, they love the name. Really, they named you a joke. That's so interesting. And that's why you named your son a heel. It's really getting better and better in every generation. You really know how to, you guys know how to boost self-confidence. You're a heel and you're a joke. You're a heel because you're holding on to your brother's heel. That's great for your self-image. And you're a joke because you made your mother laugh. Wow. This is real Jewish stuff. Real Jewish issues here. So in Torah, Parshas told us, the Baal Tanya has a whole maimer, why they named Yitzchak Yitzchak. He says the purpose of life is to create laughter, to create humor. How did I get into humor? Is the Torah a humorous document? It's a very humorous document, and one of the greatest humorous moments happens in Parshas Vayeshev. Yehuda, who is the guardian of the integrity of Judaism, is the one who says, Yosef wants to go to the Goyim. Zol again. Let him become a universal Jew. I say we need to be parochial. Stay in the orbit, in the community, hatch him, match him, dispatch him. That's it. Bris, Pidyon Ben, Upshenish, Bar Mitzvah, Yeshiva, marry him off. Let him make a couple of dollars, bring a new generation to the world, and next. Don't get complicated on me. The orbit works. It worked 4,000 years, it'll work. Yosef, you have visions of changing the world? Gesundheit. Yehuda is the guardian of the integrity of Judaism. When Yosef is coming to the brothers, Vayomer Ishalach, if one told his brother, who? Shimon and Levi. Shimon and Levi were the ones who could not deal with the fact that Dinah was violated. What did they tell their father? Hachizoina yaset achotenu es achisenu. Our sister is going to be turned into a harlot. They are the ones who say Yosef is going to endanger our future. The same Shimon and Levi who destroyed Shechem. And this happens in Shechem. Now, after Yosef is sold, the Torah surprisingly takes a break, stops the story, and goes to a new story. What's the new story? Yehuda finds his own marriage. A ganze Maisa before we go back to Yosef. And I want you to see the nuance here. What happens to Yehuda? Yehuda, the guardian of integrity, however you want to explain it, succumbs to a person he doesn't know is Tamar. Yosef, the black sheep in the family, the one about whom everybody said he's the closest thing to Judaism, the one who said, Nebuch, every family got a black sheep, everybody. Listen, you got 12 boys, one OTD, Azoy Schlacht. Families with 6. Relax. Yosef, in depraved Egypt, has the same Nisayan, the same test like Yehuda. And what does he do? Vayonos vayetze achutza. He flees outside. What was the difference? What was the difference between the two? Yosef's unique power is that wherever he is in the world, he can find God. And that's the difference of the two philosophies. One philosophy says to find God, you need to be insulated. Yosef says no. Ein oid mulvadoi. The world is divine, and therefore, wherever you are, if you can only open your eyes, Ben Peiris Yosef, Ben Peiris Alei Ayin, if you can only open your eyes, you'll be able to perceive divinity there. So when he wants to tell his brothers to give a report to his father, what does he say? God made me Samani Elikim La'adin Al Kalarit Mitzrayim. God made me a master on all of Egypt. So the Helik Yerushaner, Rabbi Saul of Rishon says, we don't understand what he means. What he means is, Samani Elikim La'adin. I made God a master on all of Egypt. Samani Elikim. I brought Elikim into all of Egypt. So when Yaakov tells Yosef, your brothers are shepherding in Shechem. So the Tzemach Tzedek and the Bas Ayin both say, B'Shechem is Baruch Shem Kvoid Malchusai. Lecha, go, ve'eshlachacha aleim, I will send you to them. Vayomer loy is la'olam vad. Baruch Shem Kvoid Malchusai la'olam vad. The brothers have Baruch Shem Kvoid Malchusai. You're going to have to give the Jewish people the last 2 words, la'olam vad, to bring it into the world. For them, Kvoid Malchusai remains in a cocoon of spirituality. You're the one who are going to have to teach the Jewish people the secret of integration, the power of synthesis, the ability to be able in every single situation to encounter the divine and live with your soul in that space without becoming defiled or running away into an aloof cocoon in paradise. And for that, Yaakov says, Lecha ve'eshlachacha aleihem. Doesn't say go. Go, and I will send you to them. Go! What's ve'eshlachacha? So you think Rabbi YY is just getting picky on a word. Ve'eshlachacha. I'll prove to you I'm not. When Yosef meets his brothers and he reveals who he is, V'lo Yosef le'esapik, he uses the same word 3 times in his conversation. And whenever a word is used 3 times in 2 or 3 psukim, you know that's what do they call it? A key word. When his brothers find out who he is, he says, relax, don't get depressed. You didn't sell me. Ki lemichya shlachani elakim. God sent me. And then he says, vayishlecheni elakim. God sent me to create survival here in the land. And then he says, Loi atem shalachtem oisikiyim elikim. 3 times shlichut, sent. I shared last night a very anecdotal but profound metaphor, a parable or idea that the Talmud Rebbe once shared. He said, what's the difference between Breslov and Chabad? So he said, Reb Nachman wanted Breslov and Hasidim should have long payas. He said, in case some of you end up in purgatory, I should be able to schlep you out. If you have payas, I could schlep you out. He says, a Breslover comes to heaven, and the angel says, you've been a good Breslover. He says, I tried. Emunah, simcha, betach, not always. Depends on the mood. Uman Rosh Hashanah every year, not always. Tikkun HaKloli, Tikkun HaPrati, could be better. Gehenom, go to purgatory. Goes to purgatory, the barbecue begins. It gets hot. What does a Breslover do? He starts screaming and shouting and praying like a Breslover chassid knows. If you ever hear 3 o'clock in the morning, the dark alleyways in Svas. Abba! Reb Nachman hears, Ayid Shreit, he comes running in. You have payas? Of course, nice, long, beautiful payas. Chaps him by his payas, schleps him out of purgatory, chaval al azman. Talmud Rebbe says a Chabad chassid also comes to heaven after 120 years. The angel says, no, you were a Chabadnik the way the Alter Rebbe wanted, the way the Rebbe wanted. He says, could have been better. You daven like they wanted, you learned like they wanted, you loved Jews like they wanted, you spread the light, you changed the world like they wanted. Could have been better. Go to hell. He goes to purgatory, the barbecue begins, Sevet Hayes, he starts screaming, Rebbe, Hatzileini, save me. Talmud Rebbe says, Lubavitcher Rebbe hears Ayid screaming, runs in. Get me out of this place. He says, the Rebbe walks over to him, takes out $1 from his pocket, gives him $1 and says, Hatzlacha Rabbi in your shlichus right here. Lots of success in your mission right here. But the truth is, this was Yosef's secret. Yosef never saw himself as a victim of circumstances. Yosef saw himself as a shliach. Yaakov already told this to him. Lecha, don't go to them. Eshlachacha aleim. I'm sending you. That's why it says the name Yisrael, not Yaakov. The Rogatchover says, whenever it says Yaakov in Chumash, it's referring to the person as an individual. Whenever it says Yisrael, it refers to Yaakov as a prototype of Klal Yisrael, as the patriarch who defines the destiny of the people. Yisrael tells Yosef, I'm going to send you on a shlichus, vayomer loy, la'olam vad, hineni. So therefore, when the pasuk says v'Yosef hurad Mitzrayim, Yosef was lowered down into Egypt. What does the Medrash say? Hurad, from the word v'yerd miyam ad yam. It means ruled Egypt. It's an oxymoron. He didn't rule Egypt, he was a slave. Depends how you see it. You could look at it in 2 ways. And let's apply this in our own lives. Each of us is lowered down into situations that we don't ask for. The only people I know who have perfect lives are the people I don't know. The only people I know who have perfect marriages are the people I don't know. Present company, of course, excluded. We are all lowered into situations. Mitzrayim from the word mitzarim, restrictions, confinements. Serious ones and not so serious ones. Deep ones and superficial ones. Some of us have found ourselves being lowered down into Mitzrayim from childhood. Not when you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. Some people at the age of 7 felt already that they were given a bad lease on life, due to events completely outside of their control. Loss, challenges, abuse, pain, anxiety, whether social, emotional, spiritual, physical, financial stress, issues in the home, issues with the family, with the community, with the school. Never mind people who really endured serious challenges and struggles, whatever age of life, but for a child, these things are so impressionable and they don't even have the maturity and the ability to discern and to be able to make sense and to know when to blame themselves and not to blame themselves. And sometimes our entire narrative of the self is completely defined by events that we're not even aware of, define our entire narrative of life. And here the Medrash is saying one of the profoundest ideas, I believe, that the Rebbe shared Yutas Kislev Tovshin Memalef, 19th of Kislev, 1980 by the Fabrengen. The Medrash is saying Yosef wasn't lowered into Egypt. Yosef was ruling over Egypt. What does that mean? He was not. He was sold as a slave. And the answer is, when Yosef was taken down, you could interpret it and say, he was naive, he was clueless, he was an FM soul. He was not. He felt the pain. He was present. We know later in Parshas Miketz Reuven tells his brothers, Hashem emanachnu, our brother was begging us not to do it, and we didn't listen. Yosef wasn't clueless. Yosef wasn't in La La Land. To be the economist, the chief economist of a superpower of the time, you can't be in FM radio. You got to be in AM. You have to be enmeshed and entangled. I should say you have to be present in the nitty-gritty of Egyptian culture and life. He dressed like them. He spoke their language. He understood them. He knew their culture. He led them. Pare said, without you, nobody lifts a hand or a foot in this country. He's the leader, he's the prime minister. You can't be sitting in an ivory tower somewhere. You got to be tweeting to your country. Or however you communicate. Yosef is very present. He's present. But when he is descending, when he is taken into a situation, he looks at it and he says, I was not schlepped down here. I was given an opportunity to conquer this reality. I was sent on a mission to redefine the circumstances. I was sent on a shlichus to bring light into this very place. And that made all the difference. I can't always change the facts, but I could, as we could in psychology they call it, I can reframe them. And the frame of a picture is sometimes as important as the picture. You can have a beautiful painting, but if you have the wrong frame that your husband bought, it's really mamish not going to work. You got to reframe the picture. The picture is the same, but how do I frame it? Yosef couldn't deny the facts of what his brother did, but the choice that he had, the choice that I have, the choice that you have is to say, what is it? Hurad? Was I schlepped down, lowered, subjugated, crushed, destroyed, repressed, deprived? Or Hurad, I was summoned. I was summoned to rise. I was summoned on a mission to be able to go on a journey to places other people don't go, in order to be able to reveal the light, the potentiality, the godliness, the opportunity within this domain. It doesn't mean it's not painful. Yosef cries more than anyone else in Tanakh, you know that, 7 times. Avram cries how many times does Adam cry in Chumash? Zero. How many times does Avraham cry? Once. When? At Sarah's funeral. Yosef cries 7 times. He's a very emotional person. He's very fully emotionally present in every situation. But the situation never defines him. He defines it. That's why he's never lowered anywhere. He's sent. I haven't been lowered. My life has not been snatched away from me. My happiness has not been taken away from me. I was sent into this situation as a shliach of Hashem in order to transform the landscape, to be an ambassador of love, light, and hope. I don't always choose which country I'm sent to as an ambassador. And some of those countries, the Hanof, the Nof. Some of those countries, the view ain't that tasty or sweet. It's nice to live in nice Nof. Right? It's nice. It's beautiful to live in the Nof. But an ambassador is sent to very interesting places. But the ambassador doesn't say, I was sentenced. Hurad, I lost my life. No. I'm an ambassador in that country, of my country. Yosef saw himself as an ambassador of love, light, and hope. And that's the difference between being sold and being sent. When you sell something, the object that you sell is passive. It has no say. You sell a watch, you sell a home, you sell a business, you sell it. It's like you're like a ping pong ball. Boom, boom, boom. Yosef says, I wasn't sold, I was sent. When you send somebody, you have to evaluate their talents and resources before. You're sending them because you know that they have the capabilities of fulfilling the missima, fulfilling the mission. So I can't change my past, but I have to answer this question, and you have to answer this question. Were you sold or were you sent? I want to ask you to think about all the events that shaped your life. Positively, I don't want to say negatively, but those that posed a challenge in your life. Especially profound moments. And ask yourself how you interpret those events. Were you sold? You were literally treated like a ping pong ball? Sold it, punk, 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 punk. In other words, you are completely irrelevant. Fate overtakes you and you're a complete victim. What we call in Hebrew, at kurban, misken, umlelet, umlala, probably, right? Umlala, right? Miskena, not misken, miskena. I'm doing my ulpan. Am I that kurban? I'm sold? Or I was sent by God into every one of those situations because He evaluated my soul beforehand, choosing me as an ambassador to bring light, love, and hope into that place and to discover a deeper layer of the self and my relationship with truth and the divine. I say again, it's not always an easy mission. Sometimes missions are tough. Not every ambassador has it easy. But I'm not sold. I'm sent, a different perspective. V'Yosef Hurad Mitzrayim. However, Yaakov knew that this is Yosef's destiny. That's why he makes for him a ksoines pasim, ktonet pasim, a multi-colorful tunic, and the brothers are upset. Who gets so upset about a colorful shirt? Go to Bloomingdale's and buy one. Go to Century, they have now sale, Century 21. And if you're still depressed, eat a falafel with hummus or lafa, it'll certainly knock you out. You throw your brother into a pit because your father made him a colorful tunic? I mean, chevre, titoreru, ktsat, muvlit bagrut, yeah? It's like World War breaks out because you buy one child a Slurpee. I mean, that's taka the minig by Yidden. That's taka the minig by Yidden. But you're talking about mature kids here. This is a very deep idea. The multicolorful tunic is not just a physical multicolorful tunic. It represents multicolorfulness in life. The brothers don't appreciate diversity. They want to remain inculcated, isolated, insulated, which is amazing. Yosef is the one who's going to have to face a world filled with contradictions, filled with conflict, filled with paradox. And he's going to have a choice. What do you do when you see paradox? Do you become fragmented or do you create a mosaic? You got it? When you see paradox, do you create a tapestry? Do you create a symphony, a Beethoven piece, which is comprised of so many conflicting emotions and experiences, or do you become shattered into pieces? Yosef had a ksoinis pas. He was given by his father the multicolorful tunic to be able to enter into a world that is filled with conflict and paradoxes, filled with ups and downs internally, and yet turn it into a beautiful cloak, a beautiful garment, seeing the harmony that underlies the diversity. Not everybody can do it. If you were not given the ktoinis pasim, you can't. Fragmentation of diversity will fragment you. It will shatter you. That's why the Shvatim could not understand Yosef. It says, Vayakir Yosef es echa v'hem lo yikiru. Yosef recognized his brothers, they didn't recognize him. So Rashi says, because when he left them, they had beards. He was a teenager, he didn't have a beard. The Baal HaTanya, the Alter Rebbe, says Yosef recognized his brothers. His brothers never recognized him, meaning they could never appreciate his derech in Avodas Hashem. They couldn't. It was too new, it was too novel for them. They really couldn't go where he did. They had to remain FM souls. They couldn't go in to AM. However, Yosef is 17. And the wife of Potiphar doesn't stop. And remember, he's an orphan. And it's pikuach nefesh. The Gemara says in Yuma, she threatened to torture him, to kill him. The Gemara says she used to dress up in 3 different uniforms, 3 different outfits a day. Shachris, mincha, ma'ariv, breakfast, lunch, and supper. Just imagine her husband's credit card bills. That's what she did. She went shopping to impress Yosef. The Gemara says in Yuma 35, every meal she had another outfit. It's like in the hotels. Every meal. Mit gutem, and she did everything. She told him she's going to turn him into the master of the world. She had a lot of power, that woman. When he said no, she said, I'll kill you, I'll blind you, I'll torture you, I'll maim you. And she does it. She puts him in a prison for life. It's before Matan Torah. It won't affect shidduchim of the family. At some point, Yosef says, you know what? Maybe 5 minutes is the right way to go. You'll figure it out. Vatis besehu bevigdoi lemer. The word beged comes from the word boged. You know what a boged is? A traitor. Why? Because clothes betray you. I could be a multi-billionaire and dress like a schnorrer and a homeless man. I can be a schnorrer and dress like a millionaire. People do it all the time. We use clothes often to eclipse ourselves. Sometimes in a positive way, sometimes in not such a positive way. Some people, in fact, transfer their identity from themselves to their clothes, meaning they don't care what they look like, they care what their clothes look like. Somebody once told me, we were speaking about kosher and this, so he says, you should know that in my house I always eat kosher. I go out not, but in the house I eat kosher. I told him after 120 years, one thing I know, your dishes are going to go to paradise. You, I'm not sure, but your dishes are here. They focus on themselves, but there's no self. The clothes become the self. So clothes are called beged, boged. Vatispeseyu bevigdoi, lamer. She grabs him by his beged, saying, not vatoimer, lamer. The beged says it. What do we mean? The wife of Potiphar grabs Yosef in a very vulnerable spot. She says, you know that you're a boged. You know that you're a traitor. So why don't you at least enjoy it? You know that you came home today with certain thoughts in your mind. You know who you really are better than everybody else. You know that you are at the verge of insanity. Only everybody else thinks you're normal. But you know who you are. You know you're at the verge of depression. You know how many times you questioned your entire life, your entire marriage, your entire future. You know how often you wake up in the morning and you're like, why me? You know you're not in tune, you're not in sync. Lamer, that's the moment she wants to grab him. Bevigdoi, telling him you're a boged, you're a traitor anyway, so just live it up. Abandon higher, noble dreams and ambitions. Vayazov bigdoi biyada vayonas vayetze hachutza. He leaves his begida in her hands, his beged, and he runs outward. At that moment, Yosef tells the wife of Potiphar, it's not true. I have moments of deep challenges. I have questions, I have doubts, I have dilemmas, I have problems, I have profound struggles. And sometimes when I'm in the privacy of my room and my home, I can cry for 2 hours. But then as the guests come or as I get the call, I wipe my tears and I'm like, hey, how is life? Baruch Hashem, awesome. Never been better. It's never been better. I know I have those moments, but Vayazov bigdoi biyada. He does not allow the begida to define him. Why? Because he is always a messenger, a mission. If I wake up in the morning, some of us wake up in the morning and like, yay! Like you, right? Yay! This is awesome. A new day. We're going to go conquer the Middle East today. Mizrach HaTichon, okay? Or whatever. I'll conquer the Shviga today. Whatever you want. Probably the Middle East is easier, okay. Not my Shviga, but other Shvigas. You tell her I said that, okay? Some people wake up, it's like, yay, moida ani alakaina shama, I couldn't wait. You go get your iced coffee, you exercise, you do your yoga, meditation, Pilates, transcendence, prayers, studies, shiurim, everything. You communicate with the birds, with nature, with heaven. And all is great, awesome. You're on a good start. But not all of us wake up that way. Some of us, the moment we wake up, there is a tsunami of thoughts in our heads. Some of them are very, very difficult to deal with. We call ourselves inclined to melancholy, right? But here's the question. I may not be able to get rid of those thoughts when I wake up. But was I sold or I was sent into that place? If I was sent into that place, I still have all those thoughts, but they don't define me. There's an I that defines them. I give them context. They don't put me into their context. I put them into my context. So Yosef, Vayazov bigdoi biyada. I'm not a traitor. I'm a chelek Elokai mimal. I'm divine. I was sent into certain places to reveal the light over there. Vayonos vayetze hachutza. He goes outwards. Vayonos. He's free. Vayetze hachutza. And that's why he could refuse her. Vayimain. He could refuse her. And on Vayimain, there's a unique musical note known as the shalshalas. Vayimain, which is only 4 times in Chumash, Vayerech HaYisara Vayeshev and Tzav. But he has to be able to see his father's image in the window. What is that image of his father? That's the shalshelas, the chain. But it's one more thing, and for this you have to understand the first Vayemoin. And here I share with you an insight by the Arachayim HaKadosh. It says, Yaakov says, my son was torn into pieces by an animal, Taraf Yosef. Vayakumu kol banav v'chol b'noisav l'nachamai. All of his sons and all of his daughters stood up to comfort him. Vayemoin lehisnachim. He refused. Asks the Arachayim, we never heard that Yaakov had daughters. Suddenly, in the middle of Shiva, they all come out of the closet. We heard he had one daughter, and she was pretty an interesting person. She really gave him a run for his money. He thought he had 12 sons to deal with. But Dina was really, really out there. She was like, whoa, fasten your seatbelt, Tati. It's going to be an interesting ride. I am outdoors. I am out there. I'm extroverted. I'm really not introverted. I mean, cooking for Shabbos is nice, but it's not my thing. Sewing and weaving is nice. I know our grandmothers did it, but it's not my thing. Even becoming a physical therapist or a school teacher, it's great stuff. Vateitze Dina. She got to go out. It's like Yaakov takes a deep breath, fastens his seatbelt. So some of you know when your daughters hit a certain age, which here in Israel is usually 9. Vateitze Dina Leroy. She got to see. She got to see. And Dina was, of course, Yosef's soul, right? You remember that story? Dina was supposed to be Yosef. Leah made a switch with Rachel. So Dina and Yosef have very deep similarities, which is the reason why Dina's daughter, from her relationship with Shechem Osnas, ends up marrying Yosef. However, we never heard that he had daughters. Suddenly, Yaakov is sitting Shiva. He has daughters. Who? I don't understand. We're in the middle of Vayeshev. Yaakov is an old man. Suddenly he has daughters? What, it was a secret? It was a secret that he had 11 daughters? What are you hiding? For carrot, it's good for taxes. For shidduchim, it's tough, but what are you hiding? You have 11 daughters. So the Arachayim says something magnificent. He says, it says they all stood up to comfort him. How? How? Basically, that's what the pasuk means. Vayakumu kol banav v'chol b'noisav l'nachamai. They showed Yaakov, look at all your sons and look at all your daughters. This should be a comfort. It didn't work. So the Arachayim says, what were they telling Yaakov? I don't understand you, Yaakov. You lost one, but you got 11 sons. You got 12 beautiful, beautiful daughters. Come on. Don't say, Ered el bni avil sha'oila. I'm going to go down to the grave, a mourning, destroyed man. This whole family is worthless. What the Arachayim is telling us is Yaakov was crying for Yosef, and they made a Friday night meal, and you had around the table 11 boys, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, you had everybody besides Yosef, and you had 12 girls. And Yaakov is weeping. He cuts the challah and he cries. He makes kiddush and he cries. He sings the negunim and he cries. He eats the chicken and he cries. And sometimes happens at certain homes. And they look at Yaakov and they say, "Give a cook. Look at these 12 daughters, valedictorian of Beis Yaakov, Beis Rivka, Beis Ruchel, Beis Chana, Beis Suda, Beis... Look at these maidlach and look who they married. Look at your boys, the Rosh Koila, Rosh Yeshiva, Rosh Masif, the head of Atzalah, head of Misaskim, Mishayrim, Mizamrim, makes hospitals, the biggest Baal Chesed in the history of humanity, biggest Talmud Chacham, Rabban Shel Kol Bnei HaGoyla, unbelievable Chevra. Okay, Yosef, you know Yosef was a problem kid. You know Yosef stood in front of a mirror busy with his hair, yeah, every family has one, that's statistically, was willst du? You got 24. You want all of them to be, come on, Yaakov, got to be realistic. Vayemoyin le'isnachem, he refused to listen. Why? So what does Rashi say? People could find comfort somewhat for somebody who passed away. There's closure. Somebody who's alive, there's no closure. So it's a different level of grief. Gilad Shalit's parents, you remember 5 years in Hamas. You don't know what to do. You can't sleep, you can't not sleep. It's not grief, it's uncertainty, it's complete bewilderment. Vayemoin lisnachem. But I want to, with your permission, apply this to our own emotional, spiritual, psychological lives. Because every one of these people is also a parable, a metaphor. There's that one child who ends up in a pit. I don't mean a physical pit. I mean an abyss. Addiction, abuse, deep pain, deep anxiety. And then this boy becomes a slave. And I don't mean a physical slave. I mean emotionally a slave. He's not in control of his life anymore. What do you call it in Hebrew? Hitmakrut. Right? Hitmakrut. Nachon? Addiction is hitmakrut. He becomes a slave. And then he ends up in a cell. I don't necessarily mean physical. It could be emotional, spiritual, financial, psychological. They all look at Yaakov and they say, we know you have a boy who ended up there. We know that. But look how many boys and girls you have nachas from. Yaakov, relax. Vayemoin lehisnachem. He refused. Why? So Chazal tell us, and Rashi says, because you don't get comfort for somebody who's alive. Yaakov told everybody, Yosef is not dead. My son is alive. Yaakov refuses to be comforted for Yosef because he would not accept that Yosef is spiritually, emotionally, and psychologically dead. I know I have a beautiful family and I love them and I'm proud of them and I enjoy them every day. But don't call my son Yosef dead. I know him, he's not dead, he's alive. Now look at this. Hundreds of miles away, whatever the distance is, a 17-year-old boy is in a depraved country, alone in the world. And a woman becomes very infatuated with him. And incessantly, she tries to bring him down spiritually. And the Torah uses one word to describe his ability to resist her. Vayemoin. The same Vayemoin it uses for Yaakov. And now open your hearts. You know why Yosef could refuse Potiphar's wife? You know why Vayemoin? Because he has a father who refuses to believe that he is spiritually dead. He has a father who will never stop believing in him. Vayemoin lehisnachem. Yaakov says, you don't tell me about my son. I know Yosef. I know Yosef from inside. I know Yosef's etzem. I know Yosef's pnimius. I know Yosef's core. He's no spiritually, psychologically dead. He's on a journey. He's on a shlichus. He's an ambassador to places where I don't go and you don't go, where we can't go. He's not dead. Because Yosef has a father who refuses to give up on him. He refuses to give up on himself. Because he has a father who doesn't stop believing in him, he will not stop believing in himself. Even at that day, when Potiphar's wife proves to him, Yosef, you're a traitor anyway, live it up. He saw the image of Yaakov, his father. What did he see? He didn't know what it looks like, what he looks like. He knew what Yaakov looks like. He saw the image of his father in himself. He saw that he has a father who believes in him, and that allowed him to see his own image from a different perspective. Doesn't only mean he saw the image of Yaakov. He saw the yoiknoi, his own image, from Yaakov's perspective. When you have a father, when you have a mother who believes in you for real, you see yourself in a different way. At that moment of deep confusion, where your entire destiny and identity is on a crossroad, if there's somebody who believes in you till the end and refuse to say, he's dead, let's say Kaddish. We'll make a siyum and we'll say Kaddish and we'll build an institution for Yosef. Yaakov says, no. Yosef is alive. As he will say one day, Oid Yosef Chai. You have a child who could look into themselves and believe in themselves. So Yosef tells Potiphar, I'm not a boged. I'm not a bad person. I'm not an evil child. I know people told me I'm a bad kid. I know I was thrown out of 9 yeshivas. I know even the Israeli system couldn't deal with me. I know that. But I'm not a boged. I'm not a traitor. We're told we're bogdim. There's a voice in me. You're a traitor, you're a disappointment. Look at your father. Look at your mother. Look at your brothers. Look at your Zayda. Remember what they used to tell you in school? Your older sister, wow, what a nachas. Anybody, any smart principal ever told that to you? When your brother was in school, I never had to talk to him about these things. It's like, wow, pedagogical brilliance. Compare him to his brother. It's exactly what he needs now for his psychological serenity. His brother doesn't have 1% of his challenges, nor of his genius, nor of his creativity, nor of his charm, nor of his good looks. His brother's a good kid. Why don't you like your brother? He's a Mozart. His brother's an accountant. Was willst du? Nothing wrong. I love accountants. Mozarts are complicated, that's it. And if Mozart would have grown up in a home without a piano, what would he look like? What would Mozart be doing in the middle of the night if he grew up in a home without a piano? Where would that genius go? Where do you think? Like what? Like a Bolshevik revolution. Like Trotsky. Jews are Mozarts. If they don't have pianos, the creativity and revolutionary spirit will go somewhere. And not always to places that are so productive and desirable. Some of you remember an actor, Zero Mostel. He was a Hollywood personality. I always wondered who in the world gives their son a name Zero. It's almost like a joke and a heel. It gets better. Zero Mostel. You could Google it. His name wasn't Zero Mostel. His name was, listen to me, Shmuel Yoel. He grew up in New York in a frum family, Chassidish family, 8 brothers, all observant. Why in the world, when he became an actor, did he change his name to Zero? You know how you say zero in Hebrew? Efes. In Yiddish, null. Garnished. You know why? He had a member in his family. He said this. He had a member in his family. I'm going to say it the way it is. Who used to tell him. Close member to him. Shmuel Yoel. That was his name. Shmuel Yoel, du bist a garnished. Und du wirst allemal bleiben a garnished. You're a nothing. And you will forever amount to a nothing. So he says, I needed a name. So what's the best name? Zero. He gave that person a lot of nachas. He lived up to his expectations. Zero. But he became a renowned personality in the world of Hollywood with quite many Oscars and other awards. This is Reb Shmuel Yoel. Hamachuna b'shem Zero. If you're not going to make your child feel special, somebody else will. But it may be in different ways. Yaakov's Vayemoyen is what allowed Yosef's Vayemoyen. He refused. Very good. Vayemoyen means refused, but what's the root of the word? Vayemo'en, imun, emunah. What does imun mean? Confidence, trust, right? Imun, ish ne'eman, emunah, faith, trust. Vayemo'en lehisnachem, because he believed in his child. He had confidence in his child. He trusted his child. And therefore, Yosef had trust in himself and his power. Vayemo'en. Children, students, and everyone has a child, either physically or spiritually. V'shinantam levanecha elu hatalmidim. We have students, we have disciples, we have pupils, we have children we can touch, whether they are our own biologically or not. What they need is a mother and a father, a personality, a master, a teacher, a rebbe, to believe in them. Not superficially. Not when they're sitting and doing what you want. Then it's easy to believe in your kids. Father told me, I believe in my kids as long as he does this. No, you don't believe in him at all. It's easy. When he's sitting in front of me, learning a Blat Gemara, Machaya. To be able to believe in Yosef when he's not here. When everyone says wild animals have destroyed him. He's in the abyss, he's a slave. That's when I believe in my child. Because I know my child. He may have struggles, but he's on a journey. He's a shliach. He's not a victim. And if I could see it, he'll see it. That's why Yaakov told him, L'cha v'eshlachacha aleim. Vayomer lo hineni. His mission is to reveal Baruch Shem Kvoid Malchusay. Where? La'olam vad. In the world. It's a different journey. For that journey, he has to be elsewhere. Some time ago, I was giving a lecture for Amudim. It's an organization in America. It was in Deal, New Jersey. It was a 2-day conference of various 80 organizations in the U.S. that deal with kids at risk and drug problems, addiction problems, abuse problems. They all came together for 2 days, as all Jewish conventions. Most of the time you eat, and in between there's a few speeches. So after breakfast, one day as everybody was eating their corn healthy muffins, gluten-free, stuffed with sugar, but healthy, I gave the keynote one morning and I finished speaking. And a Jew comes over to me, introduces himself as Dr. David Pelkovitz, who's a professor of psychology in Yeshiva University and a therapist for the last 35 or 40 years in New York. And he tells me, Rabbi Jacobson, I want to share with you a story that I experienced once. He says, a boy came into me for therapy, a 15 or 16-year-old boy. And I loved him at first sight. I just saw this kid as this wonderful person. He was at a yeshiva, and it wasn't working for him. The system wasn't working for him. And he was just an incredible kid, charming and insightful and deep and entrepreneur and material, like a very original person. And I'm like thinking, this kid doesn't have a problem. People around him have a problem. So after the first session, I say, I think the best thing is if next week you could bring into the office your father, your mother, your siblings, and if you have grandparents. So I said, Dr. Pelkovitz, I never heard of a therapist who brings in a grandmother to therapy. She's probably 88 years old. What are you going to start asking her? Do you have issues with your mother? You mean before the concentration camps or after the concentration camps? Who had the luxury to have issues with their mother? We, Baruch Hashem, could sit and wax eloquently about our mothers. Our grandmothers didn't have that luxury. If they had a mother and a little bread on the table, they were pretty lucky, because most didn't. I said, Dr. Pelkovitz, what are you bringing in 89-year-old men and women to therapy? We're going to start psychoanalyzing them? You're happy? That wasn't part of the equation. You survived and you moved. You didn't sit and analyze emotions. Many of us grew up in homes with emotional constipation. Dr. Pelkovitz says, Rabbi Jacobson, you're right, but I just had a hunch that the grandparents have to be there, and sometimes you got to follow your hunch. Instinct. Hat ihr dat mal instinct? In German it's called Spitzenfingergefühl. Spitzenfingergefühl. Sixth sense. Spitzenfingergefühl. It's the sense at the edge of the finger, the spitz of the finger. You can't touch it, but it's the halo around the finger. Next week, the boy shows up, his siblings, whoever could come, Tati, Mami, and Tati's parents. So Dr. Pelkovitz asks the father, why do you want your boy to come into therapy? So the father says, I'll be honest, I look around at my family, such nachas. And he starts waxing eloquently about his children's accomplishments. This one finished Daf Yomi 7.5 times. This one knows Mishnah Berurah backwards and forwards. This one is a Magachia, Rosh Yeshiva, Rosh Kaila, Rosh Masifta, Rosh Asken. He's the biggest Baal Chesed since the days of Avram and Sarah. Machnes Oirach, he's a gon, he's a genius, he's the head of this, he's the head of that. And my daughters, gefalt. This one graduated here, graduated there. Machayet Tzatzkes, Shabbat Krasavitzes, Shabbat Krasavitzes, as my father would say. And who they married, my sons-in-law, you can't find better. We're the perfect family. Like all from families. Perfect, impeccable, flawless, no cracks. And I have one boy, smart kid, sleeps till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's what he does, sleeps. I feel bad, I'm embarrassed for him and embarrassed for us. 9 schools. Everyone couldn't deal with them. That's why I want him here. As he's talking, his father, an old man, gets up in the office. And he's very, very emotionally charged. And he says, my dear grandchildren, I see your father never told you the story I shared with him many, many years ago. So let me share it with you. So I came from a very big family in Poland, a lot of brothers, and I was the black sheep of the family. All my brothers sat and learned, and I was out there. It says Poland. 1938, I got my hands on a book, and I read it from cover to cover. The name of the book was Mein Kampf. I came home, I told my father, Poland is on the border of Germany. Adolf Hitler is going to conquer Poland, and there will not be a Jew alive left in Poland. He means everything he says, and he's going to do it. My father said, what? Remember, 1930, now he has 20/20 vision, hindsight. 1938, most people, you don't think, Hitler, I'm a shugana. What do you think when they spoke about him in shuls, and what is it? I'm a shugana, a tzedreit, an antisemit, Mr. Mishunas alachap, and that's it. No one realized that in 5 years, in 6 years, Poland, Eastern Europe would be Judenrein. His father said, that's the Narishkeit. Why do you speak nonsense? He told his father, I follow my hunches. I'm street smart. I'm telling you it's not going to be good. Let's escape with the family before it's too late. It's time to escape. We have to find a way, we'll escape. My father says, if you would be like your brothers and you would sit in Beis Medrash and you would learn, you wouldn't think about these stupidities. He says, listen, I should be learning, but you know that I'm smarter than my brothers. And you know that I'm more savvy than my brothers, and you know that I'm sharper than my brothers. And I know something when I see it. I'm telling you, Tata, let's take the family and run. My father chastised me. He rebuked me. And I told him, I'm going to have to go myself. I said goodbye to my parents and to my siblings, and I left. I crossed the Atlantic Ocean. I came to the United States of America. No one in my family survived. The only one. I got married here. I built, as you know, a very successful business. I did very well for myself financially. And here I have a beautiful family. The only part of our family, the only living chain of our family. I look at all my grandchildren and I try to see who resembles me most. My personality, my drive, my oomph, my character, who? And he points to that boy and he says, it's you. You are a carbon copy of me. You look like me, you think like me, you act like me. So I want everybody to know that al pi teva, based on nature, the reason why all of you are alive today, why you have the privilege to sit and learn Torah by day and by night, is because of a boy like him. You dare not denigrate this child, because if not for a boy with his resources and his soul and his perspective, none of you would even be able to be alive today, to see sunrise, to live, to continue our family, to continue Yiddishkeit, to continue Jewish life. You respect this boy. You, he says, you're going to come into my business. You're coming into my business. Dr. Pelkovitz tells me there was silence in the room. You could cut the tension with a knife. It was so quiet you can hear pins drop. And he says, Rabbi Jacobson, that's the story I wanted to share with you. He said, Dr. Pelkovitz, you can't leave me hanging like this. I'm a storyteller. I got to know the end. He says, that's the story. That was it. They left this session. He says, it was the last time the boy had therapy. Father needed therapy, not the boy. He says, it was over. No more therapy. I said, fine, what's happening now? Today, what's happening? He says, the grandfather passed on. The boy took over the whole business. And now all of his brothers work for him. That's what Yaakov understood about Yosef. So Yosef could understand it in himself. So when he saw the image of that father in the window, Vayonos, Vayetze HaChutz, he could say, I'm not a boged, I'm not a traitor. At last, how appropriate is it that Parshas Vayeshev usually coincides with Yutas Kislev? Essentially, everything I described till now, this entire perspective, was one of the greatest ideas and seminal contributions of the Baal Shem Tov and his disciples, particularly the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, and his disciples and successors, of understanding Judaism, understanding the role of the human being and the Jew in the world, and understanding our relationship with God. Whenever Judaism had to ask tough questions in history, and it had to often ask itself tough questions in history, one of the toughest questions was, will Yiddishkeit be able to face the world? Will the Jew be able to live in a world around him or her and remain yet fully entrenched in Judaism? Some movements felt insulation was the only way that Judaism could be protected. One of the great ideas of the Alter Rebbe was that ultimately the journey of Yosef is a journey that many of us and the Jewish people collectively makes. Yaakov understood that if the Jews are to survive, they're going to have to be able to embrace the perspective of Yosef, because they have a long journey ahead of them. And they're going to be in a lot of different environments and a lot of different places. So the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, the teachings of the Alter Rebbe, one of their greatest contributions to a person's life is, I would say, three things. Number one, to never ever see yourself as a victim in any circumstance. Always as an ambassador. I was never sold, I was sent. Sometimes God sends me to very interesting places, complicated places, but I was sent. I'm never powerless. There's no situation where, as the guy tells the rabbi in the beginning, al hapanim, it's over. Or the rabbi himself, when he hears that he won the lottery, faints. And I should say, many of us often surrender to that feeling, and it's human, it's normal. But the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, always taught, based on this idea of Yosef, you were sent into every situation, and that means you have resources you may not imagine. It may be painful, but never ever look at yourself as, I ended up here, Nebuch. You're not a Nebuch. Even though as Jews we sometimes love to be Nebuchs, because we pass the buck, we blame the world, and we start sighing, and then we eat some cheesecake to silence the pain. But that's our superficiality speaking. You're never sold, you're sent. Number two, we often allow ourselves to be defined to ourselves as bogdim, as traitors. What do I mean by a traitor? No one thinks they're traitors. As disappointments. I'm a disappointment. Somebody asked me, what's the definition of a Jew? I said that he has guilt. And if he doesn't feel guilty, he blames himself. When a Jew makes a fist, write that down. When a Jew makes a fist, the next step is, Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Al Chet, 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 Chet. We love it. We wallow in it. And many of us think it's the sign of religiosity. The more religious, the more guilt. The more God, the more guilt. That's the wife of Potiphar speaking. Vatispeseu bevigdoi. She loves guilt. She loves telling you, what a disappointment. What a loser. Look how this and this and this, you never get it right. Wow, you mothered all those kids. How stupid you were with all of them. What a failure you were. What a failure you were. You're a real failure. Who do you think that helps? You think that's what your children need? A mother who thinks she's a failure of humanity? Doesn't help anybody. Doesn't help God, doesn't help the world, doesn't help the Jewish people, doesn't help you. It only helps the Yetzer Hara. That's the only one it helps. Guilt doesn't improve you. Guilt is never focused on deeds. Guilt is focused on the person. If you really want guilt, focus on the deed. I try to fix what I did. Guilt doesn't try to fix what I did. Guilt just tells me I'm a bad person. And many of us are afraid not of our darkness, we're afraid of our light. We tell ourselves, who am I to be successful? Who am I to wake up in the morning happy? Who am I to be gorgeous? Who am I to be talented? Who am I to be creative? Who am I to be a success story in life? Who am I to wake up in the morning and say, yeah, I love myself? Who am I? What am I, a narcissistic nutjob? Ani smartut. Ani klumnik. Ani efes. My name is Zero Mostel. Let me do what I have to do, say some Tehillim, do what I got to do in the house, and that's it, and live with a little more guilt. That question comes from Vatispeseu bevigdoi. What do you mean, who are you? You're a chelek elikami mal mamash. You're divine. God's light is waiting to shine from your soul, to cast a glow all around you. What do you mean, who are you? The light of the divine is manifested through you. You're an ambassador of love, light, and hope. Not about arrogance or pompousness. Who are you? That question is the leimor. Vatispeseu vayonos vayetze achutz. You have to run away from those questions and walk outside. Get out of the walls. And the third great teaching of Chassidus was that even if you think you don't believe in God, remember that God always believes in you. Always. Even if you think you're not sure, blah, 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 always. Vayima'ein, from the word imun, emunah. And when you realize that, you can give that to other people. When you understand that, you can give that to every student, every friend, every disciple. We live today at a time where people don't even imagine how desperately we need such ambassadors of love, of light and hope with almost anybody you meet. A gesture, a hug, a compliment, a good word can kindle so many sparks, can lift up so many souls, can elevate so many spirits, and can set so many people on a course of healing. As long as that healing starts within me, because only what I have in me can I give to you. I can only share the light that's inside of me. If not, it's superficial, it's radud, shallow, shitchi. Some of us teachers share light that doesn't belong to us. We share information, not experience. That doesn't work anymore. The reason so many boys and girls hate school is because they're learning only information, not experience. The Navi Amos says in chapter 8, you remember? Anybody remembers Tanakh from your Gemer? I don't mean to bring up nightmares. Hine yomim boyim ne'um Hashem. Days are coming. Vishlachti rav ba'aretz. I will send forth a hunger. Loi rav lalechem. V'loi tzomei lamayim kim lishmoyez dvar Hashem. They will not be hungry for bread or thirsty for water. There will be plenty of water. What will they be thirsty? Which reminds me, it wouldn't be bad. Lishmoa dvar Hashem, to hear the word of God. So, one of the great Kabbalists gives a lovely interpretation to this pasuk. Lechem, bread, is a metaphor for Torah. It says in Mishlei, Lechu lachmu belachmi. In Tehillim, V'soratcha b'toratcha b'toch me'ah. Your Torah is in my stomach. Tanya chapter 5, Lechem is Torah. Mayim, the Gemara says in Bava Kama, Ein Mayim ala Torah. Mayim is also a metaphor for Torah. So the prophet Amos says there'll be a time there will be a hunger. Not a hunger for bread, nor a hunger for water. A hunger to hear the word of God. What does this mean? Lechem and Mayim are Torah. There'll be a time when there will not be a hunger for Torah anymore. There was a time, some of you remember, some of you became Balei Tshuva in the early 70s. How many English books were there available to read? Like 2.5? Huh? Yeah, 3.5 stories from Marcus Lehman. Lubavitch maybe had 2 books. Aryeh Kaplan maybe started to give out a book, right? There was nothing. Somebody wanted to learn Gemara, unless you had a rigorous education. Somebody wanted to learn Kabbalah, Tanakh, Medrash, Zohar, Chassidus. Somebody wanted to learn Halacha, Shulchan Aruch, master it. It was very difficult. Today we live in a generation. Lo yirav lalechem v'lo yitzama l'mayim. Lo yirav lalechem v'lo yitzama l'mayim. I meet people, I'm here in Israel for a week, I meet people, and I'm like, oh, I spend 3 hours a day with you. And I'm like, wow, I spend a lot of time with a lot of people. Person drives here every day, an hour, Tel Aviv to Yerushalayim, and I hear the way there, the way back, I know you're shiurim better than you. Between the internet, seminars, programs, archaya, etc., with MP3s and videos, wherever you are in the world, Eretz Yisrael, Tfutzot, from Tokyo to Brazil, from New Zealand to Peru, from Johannesburg to Honolulu. You can join any shiur at any time of the day or the night, any field of Torah. Incredible. The amount of Torah literature, both on the internet, in print, books and types of books. It's like a flood, in the most positive sense of a flood. A mabul of kamayim lamola aretz deya. So what's the hunger? There's a hunger. What's the hunger? I had the privilege of speaking to around 50,000 people this week in Binyanei Homa. There were like 30 programs going on simultaneously. I spoke here. I was schlepped literally by my hand. Next! I almost felt like a jukebox. A vending machine you put in, but they didn't put in the quarter. They don't even put in the quarter. They just press, and the bar is supposed to fall out. And everyone chooses what they want. You want a tuna sandwich, you want a chocolate Danish. And at some point I said, the machine is empty. Mita. That's like mita, the bed. No, dig deeper. You'll still find tuna sandwiches. You remember when you used to squeeze orange juice Erev Pesach? You remember Erev Pesach? Huh? You had this chus to grow up in such a home where they squeezed orange juice. You still do it? It's a wonderful thing. So you squeeze it, right? And then you want to throw it out. Your mother says, no, there's much more. Squeeze it again. No, there's much more. There's much more. So that's the meaning. I come on a trip somewhere. They say, how many times you want to speak? I say none. But if you want, I'll say once or twice. But you're not going to do it anyway. You're going to take the orange and then squeeze it again. And then squeeze it one last time, and you'll take the peels and put it back on the plane. And my wife will have to deal with that. Don't worry, I have a therapist for next week. It's fine. I don't let it out at her. Loirov lalechem, 50 kanaya, 50,000 yidden for Yutas Kislev, learning, singing, dancing. It's inspiring. They told me even this morning there's going to be a few women. So I come in, that's why I took the small room. Loirov lalechem v'leitzama lamayim. The amount of Torah that is available is incredible on every level. Kiyim lishmoya, as Devar Hashem, is a different type of hunger. The hunger is not for information. The hunger is, I want to find God in the Torah. I want to be able to experience Hashem in davening. I want to be able to experience intimacy with the divine when I do a mitzvah. I want to be able to appreciate kirvas elikim li toiv, the unconditional love between me and God. I want to be able to have the vayimo'ein, the dmuz di yoikna shel Yaakov, vayonos vayetze hachutza. It's a whole different idea. I spoke last night to 3,000 Bachrim from Litvish yeshivas around the world, around Israel, from Panovich, Brisk, Slabodka, Chevron, Ber Yaakov, Kol Torah, Milas HaTorah. Almost 3,000 boys came 12 o'clock midnight. And so yeah, it was a very special, we sang the Alter Rebbe's Negunim, and then I fabregned with them. So I told the Chevra, I said, you learned the Gemara, but you know what, you want the Dvar Hashem, you want to be able to find God in the blood Gemara. You want to be able to experience holistic Judaism. Halachic plus mystic equals holistic. The Tamu Uruki Toiv Hashem. The Dvar Hashem, you want to feel the experience of it. You want the divine love, the divine light to flow through your sinews, your arteries, your bones, the relationship, the experience. So the Alter Rebbe once traveled to Shklov. Shklov is a city in Lithuania, and it was a great fortress of those who opposed his ideas. And he got up on the bimah, and he gave a clap on the bimah, and he used to say everything in a niggin. When the Lubavitcher Rebbe said over the story, he repeated the words of the Alter Rebbe in the same melody that the Alter Rebbe said it. He said, Tamuru ki toiv havaya, farzucht vetir zen as der Eibishter is good. Taste, and you will see that God, Hashem, is good, godliness is good. And dozens of young men, great Bnei Torah, followed. They heard this, and they followed the Alter Rebbe, and they became his great disciples. The Tamu Uruki Toiv Hashem, the understanding of how much God believes in you. under all circumstances and all conditions, was one of the great gifts. May we internalize it, share it with ourselves and by osmosis, and also explicitly with the people around us, till the great moment of Malach ha'aretz De'es Hashem, Kamayim Layam Mechasim Bimheira B'Yameinu Mamish. Thank you very, very much.